Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Unknown Hobo. As always, I'm your host, Marlon Mohabier, and today we're actually going to be talking about how to be a better listener. Before we even get started on what you should do to become a better listener, let's go over some of the things that you might hear about how to pretend you're listening, because in all honesty, that's what a lot of people do. Some of these are actually things you will do when you properly listen. It just really depends on your intent. So if we're just going to do three things. So the first one is actually making eye contact. Now you can make eye contact with somebody and you can look very, very intent on what they're talking about. And the easy way to do that, in all honesty, is either looking directly in their eyes, or if they're very shy, look directly at their lips. Super cool. And then you can do a lot of head nodding or like, So they're like, yeah, man, I went to Walmart and then I did some backflips. You're like, And you nod your head while saying, That's the two big things. And what you can kind of do to avoid getting caught is actually just change the subject. The second they stop talking, just change the subject. Now, those are just three examples of how to pretend you're listening, which the only ones that you can do is number one and number two, because those are, for some people, that naturally happens. Like me, I actually head nod and say, and it makes sounds. Just that's how I naturally do it. And I have practiced doing eye contact with people. So I do that normally anyway now at this point. It just really, as I said, depends on your intent. I'm going to give you some examples of what happens just in case if you're somebody that's on the side of always feeling like you're not being heard, or if you're the person that sucks at listening. Mind you, I've been on both sides of the spectrum. So what we'll do is go over what it's like to be the person that is not being heard, or somebody that's talking and feels like that other person isn't actually listening to them. So one of the worst things, and I'll use a real life example, which it's pretty bad. I had to do this. So one of the worst things I think has ever happened to me in a situation where I straight up did not feel like I was being heard is I was sitting down and talking to someone, not going to say their name. Some people might know who they are. Sitting down and talking to them, and they're voicing their opinions, everything else. And I sat down and listened to them for around like maybe 10 minutes. In all honesty, that time frame is very bad, and it could have been 3-4 minutes. I have no idea because I wasn't really paying attention to as much time. But I went into this conversation with the intent because I felt like I was so unheard. I was like, you know what? I'm gonna listen to them. Let's see how long they listen to me when it's my turn to talk. So I listened to them, everything they're talking about. I'm like, okay, cool. Make sure I reiterated everything they were talking about. Make sure I completely understood what was going on. And then when it was my turn to talk, I started putting out my opinions. And while doing that, I'm counting. It's really hard to talk and count for me. I'm not the smartest tool in a bakery. I don't know, whatever. I'm just being ridiculous. So I started counting on my hands while talking. And I want you guys to take a moment, pause this podcast if you need to, take a moment and guess how long I talked before this other person got up and just walked away from me. Everyone take a second. I'll give it 10 seconds or pause. Okay, I'm not going to give it 10 seconds. 10 seconds is really long. But hopefully that's enough time. I literally got to talk for 15 seconds before they got up and walked away. And that was the most infuriating situation I've been in a very long time. The fact that you're sitting down, you're communicating with somebody, they're expressing issues and whatever is going on. You're listening to them. You're making sure you're completely understanding. You're asking follow-up questions to make sure you completely understand. And when it's your turn to talk, you get 15 seconds. I wish that on no one. Being on the receiving end of that is pretty annoying. And as I said, pretty infuriating. And it even to this day, and this happened quite a bit of time ago, I think almost a year now at this point. And I'll probably still remember it because it was just completely absurd, like 15 seconds. That's one reason why I kind of want to talk about this more as an issue. So don't do that. As I said, if you're on the receiving end of not being heard or not being able to verbalize what you're thinking, it does get very frustrating. Now, one of the side effects of being this person that's bad at listening to other people, generally people actually like you less. And the reason why is because they can't really get their point across. And it's more like you probably come off as hard-headed or even insensitive because somebody's trying to verbalize their thoughts and you're like, I'm not listening to you. It's not important, which I'm not doing mind reading, but I know from my take, that's what I think. And for everyone else, it might be different. They might think, oh, this person's not listening to me. They think I'm great. My words mean nothing to them. They are a rock. They are strong like iron and thick like steel. I don't know. So those are the big things. So just to reiterate them, which that's actually one of the good traits of listening, which we'll talk about in a second, is if you are someone that has a hard time listening, the other person generally might like you a little bit less, or it's going to happen. They might become more frustrated because you're not giving them the opportunity to get their point across. And you might come off as insensitive or hard-headed or a bunch of other things. Those are just 3 things off the top of my head that I wrote down. I didn't want to go super into detail as to keep this podcast episode short as possible in case you're driving or if you're doing backflips somewhere for whatever amount of time. So those are habits you can do to pretend you're listening. Some of the drawbacks of pretending you're listening or being someone that's very bad at listening, and the adverse reactions or negative reactions that happen to you, or maybe not directly to you, but the way that other person that doesn't feel heard might feel. So let's talk about how to properly listen. We'll circle back to making eye contact. As I said, I make eye contact. I do a lot of head nods and I'm say, That is just my talking process and listening process, because at the end of the day, there was a saying I heard a very long time ago, and I can't remember who said it. If you guys find out, please send me a DM on Instagram, which is at Marlon Mohabier at Instagram. It's literally my name. It's in the title. I say this every single episode. But if you can remember who said this, please let me know. So it's literally, make sure when you meet someone, everyone is an expert at something you're not. So if you go into a conversation with the assumption you're going to learn something from them, or you're going into to learn something from them, you're generally going to be more engaged. Because as I said before, it's all a intent, habit. You have to form that. So if you go into any conversation with the intent to learn something, you're more than likely going to be listening a little bit better. So eye contact, head nods, whatever it is, whatever works for you. I talk with my hands a lot, so it ends up happening anyway. So the second thing is actually be in the moment, which is something I 100% struggle with because I am a very, very big overthinker and my brain's always going. But try your best to be in the moment and focus on the words that they're saying. And with focusing on the words that they're saying and paying attention, you are gonna by default get the urge to maybe respond back. Now, generally people are gonna say, oh, well, you should pay attention to them, and then at the end, then you should figure out what your response should be. None of us are gonna do that. We're all gonna listen to somebody, and if we're paying proper attention to them, instinctively we're gonna think, okay, I have a question to ask here, or okay, I need to respond to this. Hold off on that urge. It is okay to have those responses, but don't go too deep in the rabbit hole of your response to them, because you're going to stop listening to them and you're going to be instead planning out a response instead, or your argument back to them, depending on the environment. So listen to them, let them finish their point, and then give them a reply. And if you have follow-up questions, the same thing. Ask those follow-up questions at that point. One thing that might happen if you're dealing with somebody that might be very shy, or somebody like I was on the receiving end of just straight up just being ignored, it's just not a good thing. Let them know that it's okay for them to keep going. Like you see this on Instagram all the time when they show somebody like acting really stupid and they show the other person saying, oh, it's okay. And they like apologize for being the way they are. And the person's like, no, it's fine. Keep going. They're interested. A lot of people are like that. So I make it an active thing when I'm listening to somebody. If I see them pause and they're not saying anything, I'm just like, isn't there more? I literally say, I'm like, isn't there more? And if they say no, I'm like, okay, cool. Then I'll paraphrase what they're saying and then keep going from there, which leads into another thing, paraphrasing what they're saying, because everyone has different speech patterns. Me, there's a lot of words that I use that I just can't pronounce correctly. And a lot of them I removed from my vocabulary because I can't pronounce them correctly. So I talk really weird sometimes, or I might say a word that doesn't make any sense. So I'm in the habit of paraphrasing, which if you're somebody that's listening to another person and you want them to know that you're listening, or if you want to get into the habit of making somebody feel good and know that you're listening, you should paraphrase, because being able to paraphrase what they're talking about means you're listening to what they're talking about. Now, I'm not saying just repeat the last 3 words. Like it said, I went to the store and bought some bacon today. it wasn't the greatest bacon, but it was turkey bacon. And then you repeat, oh yeah, you turkey bacon? And you had no idea what they were talking about, turkey bacon. Don't do that. Just be like, hey, just to make sure I understand. So you went to the store and you bought turkey bacon, correct? And they'll be like, yeah. And then you can follow questions like, why did you buy turkey bacon? Why didn't you just write like pork bacon? And then it goes into like, I don't eat pork. I only like turkey bacon because it's made from the most premium turkey in all existence. I don't know. Whatever. That was a horrible example. Maybe it wasn't. I don't know. Anyways, so do that. Paraphrase what they're doing. Ask follow-up questions. Now, there's not really much I wanted to like over flood you guys with information about how to become a better listener, because the more I give as far as ways to be a better listener, it might become less you actually listening and pretending to listen. So let's paraphrase. Be in the moment. You don't really have to be as much in the moment. That's like a C on the scale of like ABC. It's the C. You don't really have to be in the moment. The most important thing is go with the intent to learn something from the other person. You might think you're a genius, but at the end of the day, that person 99% of the time knows something you don't. I bet you $200. It might not even be something super important. Like me, just to let you guys know, I watched a documentary on corn, which was 2 hours long, and I found out corn was man-made. And like gelatin and plastic spoons and knives all have corn in them. There you go. Congratulations. All if you know some random corn history facts. I don't know why I even have that. It's just weird information. Anyways, so go when you intend to learn something. Try your best to hold off on your replies until the end. I have a very bad habit of that, in all honesty, because since I go into these conversations, I'm listening to them and I get really excited when I see somebody very excited about stuff they're talking about. So I get really hype and they say something really cool. I'm like, whoa, let me ask a question. So I get really hype in a situation, and it's something I'm personally working on to calm myself down, which, I mean, I am listening to them, but it's just like, hey, let them finish their thought process before I ask anything, and ask those questions at the end. So that's pretty much it, in all honesty. Didn't want to make this episode super long because we're doing 2 episodes a week. You should be seeing them Sundays, of course, and you should be seeing another one on Wednesdays. So Wednesdays, Sundays, normally at 12 Eastern time, unless I randomly move to a different time frame, but generally still Eastern time. You'll be able to listen to this podcast wherever you are. It's on all streaming platforms. It should be on YouTube too. If you're listening to this on YouTube or whatever, just subscribe. But at the end of the day, hopefully you actually listen to this, people that are bad at listening, which is actually really funny. Kind of a contradiction. I don't know. Anyways, keep doing whatever you're doing, and enjoy some backflips.